Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone. Let us begin. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadhamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padkamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrujatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapte Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhaiva cha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, welcome everyone. Let us continue our discussion from chapter 3 of Bhagavad Gita. Before we move ahead, some quick reflections from our yesterday's discussion. So what were the main themes or topics that were discussed yesterday? We began with Arjuna putting up his confusion before Krishna. And what was Arjuna's confusion in the beginning of chapter 3?
Which is better, karma or buddhi yoga? That was Arjuna's question.
Yes, whether am I supposed to fight or am I supposed to renounce the world? Please tell me decisively and clearly. I'm confused. And why is Arjuna confused? Although Lord Krishna explained in previously, what is the reason for Arjuna's confusion? Yes, Kanchan Gaurangi Mataji.
Because in Bhagavad Gita 2.49, Krishna has said to Arjuna that Durena verse that we should keep all the abominable actions very far away. And here Arjuna was misinterpreting Buddhi Yoga as this renunciation of his work. So therefore he's saying that first you said this, he's confused.
So yes, it doesn't seem to understand that the action performed with a selfless consciousness for a higher cause, dedicating one's work to the Supreme Lord, does not bear any result. So on one side, Krishna is telling to keep away all the abominable action, and on the other side, he's telling by the Buddhi Yoga, which is understanding to be a jnana. Although Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in this very verse gives a couple of other reasons. I mean, the same reason, but in more detail, why exactly Arjuna was confused. So we'll have a look at that also today. But before we go into that, yes, what were some other points? So then what does Lord Krishna reply to Arjuna's question? What was the response of Krishna to the query of Arjuna? Please, Aman, you can read your Bhagavad Gita, you can refer to your notes. What was the response of Krishna to Arjuna's query? Yes, please unmute yourself and you can speak. Yes, Gaurav Prabhu.
Raji, just like I understood, like Krishna wanted Arjuna not to be a pretender, like externally showing, not engaging in work, but at the internally contemplating on the sense objects. So Krishna like rejected that type of enunciation. So that is one point Krishna has told.
Okay, yes, Krishna is explaining the consequences of someone who takes a pronunciation prematurely. So externally, one may take a pronunciation, but internally, one may be objecting, one may be contemplating on the objects of sense gratification, and that is called mithyachar. And definitely Krishna is condemning that. Okay, yes, what was some of the response of Krishna? Thank you, Gaurav Prabhu. Yes, Kanchanman Mataji.
Then Krishna speaks about, okay, Nishkam Karma Yoga is better for you, so you should act. Krishna speaks to Arjuna that then Arjuna will say that this work will bound me. So Krishna is saying, no, if you do the work in this way, you will not be bound. And then one more point came that, okay, if you cannot do Karma Yoga, start with Karma Kand. So then Krishna speaks about Karma Kand and other the interdependency of demigods and like sacrifices and the chain of sacrifices, everything.
Okay, yeah. So yes, even if someone cannot perform Nishkam Karam Yoga, still it is better and safer to engage in karma to fulfill one's desire, but within the boundaries of Vedic scriptures, than to give up karma. So from verse 3 onwards up to 9, Lord Krishna is explaining that how Nishkam Karma Yoga is a better path for Arjun rather than the Jnana Yoga. In verse 3, Krishna explained that there are two categories of people who are determined based upon their faith on Nishtha. So one category is called as Sankhya Yogis, and the other category is called as Buddhi Yogi or Karma Yogi. So in verse 4, Krishna is discouraging the premature renunciation, that if someone takes a pronunciation but is not purified in the heart, what happens? They strive for sense gratification by illegal means. Externally, they have taken renunciation, but internally, the heart is not purified. So, in the next verse, Krishna says, because no one can refrain from doing anything, from something, not even for a moment. And then Krishna goes on to describing who is a pretender and who is a sincere person. The better work sincerely by trying to control one's senses and engage in your prescribed duties. That is far, far superior than artificial renunciation. So do your prescribed duties, niyatam karma, which is better than renunciation of action, karma sannyas. And Krishna says one cannot even maintain one's body without work. So then Arjuna can ask, you are telling me to work, but I may become bound up by those activities. Krishna says, yes, you can, but if you do the work in a right way, as yajna, as a sacrifice for Vishnu, then there is no reactions to those works. You will not be bound. You'll remain free from all the reactions. Mukta Sangha Samachara. And then Krishna explained, if someone is unable to do Nishkam Karma Yoga, then the path is Karma Kand. And how one can fulfill one's desires by the performance of sacrifices. Okay, so today we'll quickly go through some verses that we have already discussed. I wanted to show some important sections or some selected comments by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in those sections. Let me share my screen. So yes, in the verse, some quick points from the verse that we have already read. So the first verse, Arjun is calling Krishna by two names in the first verse. One name is Janardana and the second name is Keshava, right? And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is specifically explaining why is he calling Krishna by that name of Janardana. O Janardana, by your order, you are causing pain, Ardhan, to your own associate Jana. That is why he said Janardana. Anyone knows the meaning, other meaning of Janardana? Why Krishna is called as Janardana? What is the meaning of this name?
Protector of all.
He is protector and maintainer of the all living entities. But here, interestingly, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is explaining this name in a very different way. So Arjuna is saying to Krishna, Ardhan, you are causing pain to your own Jana. And that's why he's calling as Janardana. Also, why is he calling as Keshava? What is the meaning of Keshava generally? Anyone knows the meaning of word Keshava? The name Keshava? What is the meaning?
One who has killed the Keshi demon.
Yes. And what is the other meaning? So the killer of Keshi demon or the Kesha who has a...
इसका कुछ संधि विच्छेद करने से क इश ऐसा कुछ होता है.
Yes, that is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is telling.
One of the has beautiful hairs.
Yeah, one who has the beautiful hairs. Yeah. So, but here, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is writing, Keshava, in that Ka means Brahma, Isha means Shiva, and Va means Vayase. So, one who is the controller, Vayase, who is the controller of even Ka, Brahma, and Isha, Shiva. So, one who is the controller of Brahma and Shiva, it is not possible to bypass your order. But what exactly is your order? I want to understand with clarity. So please explain. So that is why he's addressing Krishna by Janardana and Keshava in this verse. Also, let us see in the verse second. What's the first word? Vyamishrinaiva. How Srila Prabhupada translates that word? Can someone?
Equivocal.
Yeah, equivocal instruction. So we read the Arjuna's confusion based on verse 2.49, right? But see, let us read this passage, how Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is explaining. Oh, my friend Arjun, it is true that bhakti beyond the guna is supreme, but since that is obtained only by the mercy of my great pure devotees in an unpredictable manner, it is not attained by the effort of the individual. Therefore, I have given a blessing to you. Nistray guna bhav Arjuna. So Krishna is saying to Arjuna, I have given you my blessings, rise above the three gunas. But my blessings comes only through pure devotee. So, and how those blessings will come, it's a very unpredictable manner. So that will manifest in due course of time. But what do you need to do in present circumstance? Since it is fitting to the present circumstance, directing you to engage in activity is also valid. And therefore, Krishna is saying, Karmane vadikaraste. You are qualified for your own karma. Then why do you not clearly tell me to engage in activity? You are throwing me into an ocean of doubt. You bewilder my intelligence by those words which are mixture of various meanings. Vyamishrena. Though you have mentioned action, karmane vadikaraste, you also speak of gyan, using the word yoga in such statements as follows. So in verse 2.48, and then verse 250, 252. In those verses, Arjuna is saying you are speaking only of knowledge in such statement as Yadate Moham Kalilam Buddhir Vyatishati and 252. And you're using the word eva indicates your words are not actually filled with many meanings, and it is not your desire to bewilder me as you are merciful. Nor is it that I do not know the meaning, but you should speak this clearly. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is giving in further detail why Arjuna is becoming confused based upon those series of verses. And then, okay, let's get this. Just a second. I wrote one more thing I wanted to discuss in this regard. Yes, in verse 9, without son of content perform action. Anyway, if I'm able to recall, I'll let you know. So there are some prescribed yagyas which used to be mandatory for all grihasthas specifically. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is explaining them as Panchashuna. Shuna means slaughter. Okay, anyway, let's continue. So we discussed about the cycle of sacrifices. Yesterday we concluded at that point. And let us read verse. We have to start from verse 17 right now. Okay. So far Krishna has explained that if someone has desires, then they may work to fulfill those desires, but within the boundaries of dharma, right? Now, Lord Krishna will start explaining that even if one doesn't have any desire, they should still work to set example for others. And therefore, from verse 17 onwards, Lord Krishna will begin how Nishkam Karam Yoga can be performed to set the right example for general masses. So let us begin from verse 17 onwards, and 17, 18, and 19. John Gurung Prabhu, can you please read 17, 18, 19?
Yes,
These
Prabhu.
three.
Text 17. Yastava atma ratir eva sayat atma triptascha manava atmani eva cha santustas tasya karyam na vidyate. Translation: But for one who takes pleasure in the self, whose human life is one of self-realization, and who is satisfied in the self only, fully satiated, for him there is no duty. 18th. Naiva tasya kritenartho na krete neha kaschana na chasya sarvabhuteshu kaschit artha vyapasraya. Translation: A self-realized man has no purpose to fulfill in the discharge of his prescribed duties, nor has he any reason not to perform such work, nor has he any need to depend on any other living being. Text 90. तस्मत् असक्तः साततं कार्यं कर्म समाचरः असक्तो है अचरन् कर्म परम apnoti पुरुषः. Translation: Therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty, for by working without attachment, one attains the supreme.
Okay, thank you, John Prabhu. So, 4 qualifications. First, 1, Yasva Atma Ratir Evasyan. Atma Rati means one takes pleasure in the self only. That means they don't have any longing for material pleasures. Self specifically means the spirit self. Then in the next verse, Krishna is saying, such persons has no purpose to fulfill in the discharge of prescribed duties. They have no reason for not performing such work, and at the same time, they are not dependent on any other living being. That includes demigods. So one who has spiritual intelligence doesn't perform prescribed actions with desires, but does them without attachment to results to set the right example for others. And that is why Lord Krishna is saying, still engage in the prescribed activities, but in what consciousness? Without becoming attached to the fruit of those activities. In the spirit of duty. Karyam karma samachara. Asakto hi acharan karma. Param apnoti purushaha. If you act in such way, what happens? Param apnoti purushaha. You can attain a param purush. So after listening to Krishna's instruction in these 3 verses, Arjuna is wondering, he's thinking, are there any examples of persons who are free from any sort of attachment, and they are engaged in this spirit of performing actions in a spirit of duty, and they have attained param apnoti purushaha? Are there any examples of such personalities? And Krishna says yes. What are those examples? From verse 20 to 4. Yes. Yes, Mandaleshwar Prabhu, please continue. Can you read the translation of verse 20 to 24? Can you read, Mandaleshwar Prabhu?
Krishna, like Janaka, where all self-realized souls consequently had no obligations to perform the prescribed duties in the Vedas. Nonetheless, they are performed all prescribed activities just to set an example for people in general. Janaka was the father of Sita and father-in-law of Lord Sri Rama. Being a great devotee of Lord, he was transcendentally situated But because he was a king of Mithila, a subdivision of Bihar province in India, he had to teach subject how to perform prescribed duties. Lord Krishna and Arjuna, the Lord's eternal friend, had no need to fight in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, but they fought to teach people in general that violence is also necessary in a situation where good arguments fails. Before the battle of Kurukshetra, every effort was made to avoid the war, even by the supreme personality of Godhead. But the other party was determined to fight. So for such a right cause, there is necessary for fighting. Although one who is situated in Krishna consciousness may not have any interest in the world, he still works to teach public how to live and how to act. Experienced person in Krishna consciousness can act in such a way that others will follow, and this is explained in a following verse.
Yeah.
Yes, Prabhu. People in, should I continue, Prabhu?
Just a second.
Yes, Prabhu.
So Lord Krishna is giving example of Janak Maharaj. And Janak Maharaj was a self-realized soul. And how does Janak Maharaj attain perfection? Through the practice of Nishkam Karma Yoga. He performed his duties in this spirit and he attained perfection. He had no obligation for Vedic prescribed duties after becoming self-realized, but he still performed those activities, he still performed those duties because to set the right example for people in general. Now one can ask, just like yesterday there was a question on how to identify which actions to perform to set the right example. Now, even before entering into that discussion, why at all it is essential to set the right example by these personalities? Why? I mean, what would happen if they would give up performing their prescribed duties? What is the necessity at all? Why are we thinking of setting the right example? And that is exactly Lord Krishna is explaining in the next verse. Yad yad acharati shishcha tat eva taro jana sayat pramanam kurute lokastat anuvartate. Benita Pradhan, can you read? Benita Mataji, if you are not there.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Prabhuji, sorry, my network was not good. Prabhuji's translation पढ़ना या purport?
Yeah, both Mataji.
Both. Okay, Prabhuji. Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow, and whatever standard he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. Purport. People in general always require a leader who can teach the public by practical behavior. A leader cannot teach the public to stop smoking if he himself smokes. Lord Chaitanya said that a teacher should behave properly before he begins teaching. One who teaches in that way is called acharya or the ideal teacher. Therefore, a teacher must follow the principle of śāstrī, scripture, to teach the common man. The teacher cannot manufacture rules against the principle of revealed scriptures. The revealed scriptures like Samhita, Manusamhita, and similar others are considered the standard books to be followed by the human society. Thus, the leader's teaching should be based on the principles of such standard sastras. One who desires to improve himself must follow the standard rules as they are practiced by the great teachers. The Srimad Bhagavatam also affirms that one should follow in the footsteps of great devotees, and that is the way of progress on the path of spiritual realization. The king or the executive head of the state, the father and the school teacher are all considered to be natural leaders of the innocent people in general. All such natural leaders have a great responsibility to their dependents. Therefore, they must be consistent with the standard books of moral and spiritual codes. Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Okay, so one can say, my God, it is such a big responsibility. I have to follow, I have to set the right example. So let me not become leader at all. What Srila Prabhupada is mentioning in the purport, who all are the natural leaders of the society? The king or the executive head, I mean the managerial head of the society. Or when we say society, we can consider any institution, whether it's a family, it's a society, a nation, anything. So the managerial head, who's the second leader? Natural leader. The parents, father and the mother. And third, the brahmanas, the school teachers. They are all considered to be natural leaders of the innocent people in general. And what is the responsibility towards their dependents? To set the right example. And that is why this concept of acharya is a very, very powerful, a very important concept in spiritual life or in any sphere of life. Acharya, one who teaches by one's acharan. That teaching is the most impactful, most profound, and that is the real substantial teaching. The teaching that takes place by one's behavior, by one's action. And that is why Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur used to say, the real preaching starts after you descend from your podium of speaking big things. So, and there's a very famous Christian saying of a preacher that please go to such and such place and preach. And if there is any necessity, you may speak also. So it's the real teaching happens by one's example. And in the conversation of Srila Haridas Thakur and Sanatan Goswami, when what is saying that there are some devotees who just preach but don't act. Their actions are not up to the mark. And there are some who just act, but they don't preach, they don't teach. Their actions are up to the mark, but they don't teach. But you are, you have a perfect behavior, and as well as you are teaching. So that's an acharya. Srila Prabhupada was that acharya who taught by his own example. So many of the gurus in current times, the disciples of Srila Prabhupada are acharya who are teaching by their own example. So whatever actions, yad acharati shreshthas, acharati shreshthas, that shresth jana, whatever acharan they tat eva taro janaha, that janaha, common man, follows those standards. And so the first example Krishna gave was of Janak Maharaj. Then he explained why at all it's a necessity to set the right example. And then he goes one step further and he gives his own personal example, in which he says, Na me partha asti kartavyam trishu lokeshu kinchana nana vaptam avaptavyam varta eva cha karmani. Na me partha, O partha, na me partha asti kartavyam. I don't have any duty to perform. Na asti kartavyam. I don't have any duty to perform. Trishu lokeshu kinchana. In any way within the three worlds. But na anavaptam. Avaptavyam. And I don't have anything to gain by performing any action. But varta eva cha karmani. But still I am engaged in karmani, in those prescribed action. There is no, Krishna is saying there are no prescribed duties for me. Who can prescribe any duty to Krishna? The Vedas come from Krishna. There's no work prescribed within the entire creation. At the same time, Krishna is Atmaram. He doesn't want anything, any result out of his action. He's Atmaram. There's no need for Krishna to obtain anything. But still Krishna says, Varte. He's engaged in karmani, in prescribed duties. Why he's engaged in those activities? In verse 23, Krishna is saying, Yadi hi aham na vartavyam. If aham vartavyam, na vartavyam. If one is not, if I don't engage in those activities, what will happen? Jatu karmani atindritaha. Mam vartamanu vartante. The path that I'm showing, mam vartamanu vartante, manushyaha partha sarvasha. The manushya will follow that path. For if I ever fail to engage in carefully performing prescribed duties of partha, certainly all men would follow my path. Okay. Kanchan Karangi Mataji, can you read the purport, please?
In order to keep the balance of social tranquility for progress in spiritual life, there are traditions the principles of religion. He followed the prescribed rules. Otherwise, common men would follow in his footsteps because he is the greatest authority. From the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is understood that Lord Krishna was performing all the religious duties at home and out of home, as required of a householder. These two provisions.
Can you please continue reading verse 24 also, the verse and translation?
Utsideyurme loka na kuryam karma chedaham sankarasya cha kartasyam upahanyami mahaprajah. Translation. If I do not perform prescribed duties, all these worlds would be put to ruination. I would be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all living beings. Varna Shankara is unwanted population which disturbs the peace of the general society. In order to check this social disturbance, there are prescribed rules and regulations by which the population can automatically become peaceful and organized for spiritual progress in life. When Lord Krishna descends, naturally he deals with such rules and regulations in order to maintain the prestige and necessity of such important performances. The Lord is the father of all living entities, and if the living entities are misguided, indirectly the responsibility goes to the Lord. Therefore, whenever there is general disregard for related principles, the Lord himself descends and corrects the society. We should, however, note carefully that although we have to follow in the footsteps of the Lord, we still have to remember that we cannot imitate him. following and imitating are not on the same level. We cannot imitate the Lord by lifting Govardhan as the Lord in his childhood. It is impossible for any human being. We have to follow his instructions, but we will not imitate him at any time. The Srimad Bhagavatam 10:33-30-31 affirms, Naita samachare jatu manasapihi Anishvaraha vinashatyacharan Mauryat yatha rudrobdijam vishan Ishvaranam vachah satyam tathaiva charitam kvachit Tesham yat swavacho yuktam buddhi mams tat samachare. One should simply follow the instructions of the Lord and his empowered servants. Their instructions are all good for us, and any intelligent man will perform them as instructed. However, one should guard against trying to imitate their actions. One should not try to drink the ocean of poison in imitation of Lord Shiva. You should always consider the position of the Ishwaras or those who can actually control the movements of the sun and moon as superior. Without such power, one cannot imitate the Ishwaras, who are such powerful. Lord Shiva drank poison to the extent of swallowing an ocean. But if any common man tries to drink even a fragment of such poison, he will be killed. There are many pseudo-devotees of Lord Shiva who want to indulge in smoking ganja, marijuana, and similar intoxicating drugs, forgetting that by so imitating the acts of Lord Shiva, they are calling death very near. Similarly, there are some pseudo-devotees of Lord Krishna who prefer to imitate the Lord in his Rasa Leela or dance of love, forgetting their inability to lift Govardhan hill. It is best, therefore, that one not try to imitate the powerful, but simply follow their instructions. Nor should one try to occupy their post without qualification. There are so many incarnations of God without the power of the Supreme Godhead.
So remember Arjuna's argument in the first chapter. What was Arjuna's argument? One of the arguments that if I fight and if I kill everyone in this fight, the society will be bereft of all the protectors, and which will lead to human degradation. There will be Varna Shankara, right? The women will be unprotected, and how one Sankara will be produced, and then slowly and slowly all the rituals will stop. Remember that argument by Arjuna?
Kulakshaya pranashyanti kula dharma sanatana dharmanishti pradesnam
Yes. Kulashaya pradashanti kula dharma sanatana. So Krishna is saying, now Krishna is in this section, Krishna is saying that will happen not when you give up war, not when you, that will actually happen when you give up war, not when you engage in war. Now you have to tell why. Arjuna is saying, let me not engage in war, because if I engage in war and I kill the protectors of society, human society will degrade. In these verses, ultimately Krishna is making a point. Your concern is valid, but this will happen when you run away from war, not when you engage in war. Now my question to you, all of you, is how? Has everyone understood the question? The degradation of human society will happen when Arjuna skips fighting or when he doesn't fight. It will not happen when Arjuna fights. And Arjuna is making the completely reverse argument. Okay, yes, Anandita Mataji.
Hare Krishna Pranam. Here Arjuna is a Kshatriya and he was a very empowered, very powerful Kshatriya. And if he runs away from the battle and he is foregoing his duties Kshatriya duties. And when in future, other Kshatriyas will follow the example. And what will happen? They will also run off from their duties and all the common man will follow. And this is how the degradation will start.
Yes, thank you. Excellent. Okay. Anyone would like to add into it? Yes, Mukund Priya Madhuri.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Prabhuji, one more point which I feel like saying is if Arjun was not fighting and accept the renounce order, then finally the Duryodhan party and all, they will going to rule and these kind of culture will be promoted. So this is also what Krishna doesn't want.
Yes, very wonderful point. Thank you very much, Mataji. Srila Prabhupada is saying, you are concerned that the woman will be unprotected. But see what is happening. Even in the presence of all the powerful personalities, Duryodhana did not hesitate to disrespect Draupadi. So imagine if such kings comes to power, what will happen? Yes, excellent point. Yes, Jonika Mataji.
Hi Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. If Duryodhan, first of all, duty of a Kshatriya is to fight for the protection of their dharma. If Arjuna will not fight, then in the future, all the fighters like jo bhi aayenge and they will be degraded. And second, unwanted progeny will be there. There will be no more women protection in the society. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Right. So yes, our Krishna is emphasizing that how a leader's action becomes the standard for other people. And then he's giving example of his own, I mean, he's giving his own example. And that is how he acts with this reason. If he doesn't act, then the entire human society will follow and that will lead to ruination. So Krishna is reminding Arjuna here that he is also a leader. He's coming in a very illustrious dynasty. And if he runs away from a difficult times or when a challenging situation is there, when he's asked to perform his duty in a difficult times, so his action will be seen as cowardness, not as detachment. So in future, when people are required to do a demanding duty, what will they do? They will cite Arjuna's example as a precedent and they will also quit. And when people in responsible positions neglect their duties, what will happen? The predators, the anti-elements in society, they are ever present. They will come to power. And then that exploitation of general masses will happen. And that is how degradation will come. So if Arjuna doesn't fight now, the power will go to Duryodhana and there will be exploitation. Right? So Arjuna's concern is valid, yet Krishna is taking a same concern and he's completely turning the argument. That your concern is right, but that will actually happen when you don't fight. If you fight, that only can protect the society. So till verse 24, Krishna is telling how Nishkam Karmyo can be done to set the right example. But after that, there's the transition. And how do people who are self-realized, they deal with someone is completely attached. So Krishna says in verse 25 onwards, maybe someone can read. Is there anyone who haven't read even once? Priyanka Unyal Maturi, would you like to read? Would you be willing to read? Priyanka Maturi, are you there? Okay, Vivek Prabhu, please.
Hare Krishna. To the
Yeah.
translation. As the ignorant perform their duties with attachment to results, the learned may similarly act, but without attachment for the sake of leading people on the right path. Purport. A person in Krishna consciousness and a person not in Krishna consciousness are differentiated by different desires. A Krishna conscious person does not do anything which is not inducive to development of Krishna consciousness. He may even act exactly like the ignorant person who is too much attached to material activities. But one is engaged in such activities for the satisfaction of his sense gratification, whereas the other is engaged for the satisfaction of Krishna. Therefore, the Krishna conscious person is required to show the people how to act and how to engage the results of action for the purpose of Krishna consciousness.
Okay, yes. So Krishna is comparing an attached worker and a detached worker. Yes, please continue. Verse 26 also.
Translation. So as not to disrupt the minds of ignorant men attached to the fruitive results of prescribed duties, a learned person should not induce them to stop work. Rather, by working in the spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sort of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. Purport. Vedascha sarve aham eva vedya. That is the end of all Vedic rituals. All rituals, all performance of sacrifices, and everything that is put into the Vedas, including all direction of material activities, are meant for understanding Krishna, who is the ultimate goal of life. But because the conditioned souls do not know anything beyond sense gratification, they study the Vedas to that end. But through fruitive activities and sense gratification regulated by the Vedic rituals, one is gradually elevated to Krishna consciousness. Therefore, a realized soul in Krishna consciousness should not disturb others in their activities or understanding, but he should act by showing how the results of all work can be dedicated to the service of Krishna. The learned Krishna conscious person may act in such a way that the ignorant person working for sense gratification may learn how to act and how to behave. Although the ignorant man is not to be disturbed in his activities, a slightly developed Krishna conscious person may directly be engaged in the service of Lord without waiting for other Vedic formulas. For this fortunate man, there is no need to follow the Vedic rituals because by direct Krishna consciousness, one can have all the results one would otherwise derive from following one's prescribed duties.
So it's a important example. Specifically, if you see verse 20, 25, Krishna is comparing a worker who is detached and a worker who is attached. So externally, the action may be same, but internally, the desires are very different. And then in verse 26, he is saying, if a person is detached, how does he deal with persons who are attached? They don't disturb them. And in verse 27 and 28, he further, in a much more elaborate way, compares the two kind of worker. So let us first of all read verse 27 and 28 also. Vidyavati Mataji, would you be willing to read? There, Vidyavati Mataji. Dayan with Bhakti Mataji. Are you there? Dayan with Bhakti Mataji, Vidyavati Mataji. Priya Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yeah,
Sorry.
please.
The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. Purport. Two persons, one in Krishna consciousness and the other in material consciousness, working on the same level, may appear to be working on the same platform, but there is a wide gulf of difference in their respective positions. The person in material consciousness is convinced by false ego that he is the doer of everything. He does not know that the mechanism of the body is produced by material nature, which works under the supervision of the Supreme Lord. The materialistic person has no knowledge that ultimately he is under the control of Krishna. The person in false ego takes all credit for doing everything independently, and that is the symptom of his nescience. He does not know that this gross and subtle body is the creation of material nature under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as such, his bodily and mental activities should be engaged in the service of Krishna, in Krishna consciousness. The ignorant man forgets that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is known as Rishikesh, or the master of the senses of the material body. For due to his long misuse of the senses and sense gratification, he is factually bewildered by the false ego, which makes him forget his eternal relationship with Krishna.
Okay, so what we will do now, we will just divide all of you in three groups. And you have to consult purport 25, 27, and 28. So you can read verse 28 within your group. And then you have to list as many points as you can between an attached worker and a detached worker. Okay, consult the verse, consult word meaning, translation, and purports of verse 25, 27, and 28. So I'm just randomly dividing you into three groups. So discuss among yourself, and you have 5 minutes for this task. After 5 minutes, we will discuss this.
So can you please repeat the question?
Consult verse 25, 27, and 28 and list as many points of differences as you can between an attached worker and a detached worker. So I'm dividing you into three groups. You can discuss among yourself, list down as many points as you can, and we will reassemble after 5 minutes. At 8:30, we'll disassemble at 8:35. So you can join your room, okay? So those devotees who are here, you must have received a notice for joining the room. Please join those rooms. Binita Mataji, Dhyanvit Mataji, Shruti Priya Mataji, Priyanka Mataji. Are you clear of the task right now? If you have any confusion, you can ask. Shruti Priya Mataji, can you hear us? Dhyanvit Mataji or Binita Mataji, can you hear us? Yes, Prabhu, are you clear about what to do? Okay, so I have name of representative of group 3. Who is from group 1?
Prabhuji, Kanchan Gaurangi.
Okay, and group 2? Janika Mataji, you are there from group 2, who will be representing? Can't hear you. Okay, let's.
Am I audible to you?
Yeah, now you are audible. Okay, yes, Kanchan Gaurangi Mataji, give us 1 point. The
That
difference between detached worker.
okay. The difference between detached worker and attached worker is their different desires.
Okay, yes. So one criteria is that Srila Prabhupada mentioned is based upon their desire. So detached worker, what are their desires? They desire Krishna's satisfaction, and attached worker, they desire sense gratification. Okay. Yes, Janika Mataji, next point. Can't hear you. At least I can't hear you.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Yes, Mataji, please go ahead.
Detached workers don't take credit for themselves. They always give credit to Krishna. And attached worker, they give credit to themselves and for the satisfaction of their own senses.
Okay, thank you. So another point is their conviction. So one is convinced by false ego that they are the doer of everything, and that is why they give credit to themselves. Whereas the detached worker, Srila Prabhupada, right, they are convinced of their awkward position in material association. Okay, yes, the next group 3, Anandita Mataji.
Hi, Krishna Bharji. A Krishna conscious person does not do anything which is not conducive to development of Krishna consciousness. He may act like as an ignorant man who is attached to material activities, but that other person is engaged for their sense gratification. And Krishna conscious person is working for the satisfaction of Krishna.
Okay, that's the desire.
Yes.
Okay. So one point is in terms of their engagement. Yes. So they detached worker, how do they engage themselves? In the activities of Krishna consciousness, and therefore they are naturally detached from activities of material senses. Whereas an attached worker, they does not engage their bodily and mental activity in service of Krishna because they forget that Supreme Lord is Rishikesh. Okay, group 1, any other point?
Detached person work for the satisfaction of Krishna. On the other hand, attached person work for their own sense gratification.
Okay, yes, that is covered already. Okay, any other point?
Yes. They don't know that attached person don't know that the mechanism of the body is produced by material nature, which is under the supervision of Lord. So basically, they are under the control of the Lord. They don't know that they are under the control of the Lord.
Yes. So a knowledge of their identity. An attached worker doesn't know that he or she is under the control of Krishna. Whereas a detached worker knows that somehow or other he or she has been entrapped in the material conception of life. Okay, yes. Next group. Any other point, Janika Mataji?
Forget their eternal relationship with Krishna. Like detached person is not in knowledge. Detached one is in knowledge and know their relationship with Krishna.
Okay, yes. So
And
one, yes. So one detached worker knows their real identity as part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, who is Satchit and Anand, whereas an attached worker does not know that the body has been produced by material nature, which is under the supervision of Krishna. Okay, yes. Group 3.
From the purport 25, detached person shows by example. He acts in such a way and shows that how the results of action can be done for Krishna's satisfaction. So he acts as a leader.
Okay, so detached worker, although they don't have anything to gain from it, and they don't desire it, still they are engaged in activities. But that, whereas the attached worker, they will not be steady in their activities. They will always be afflicted by the dualities of this material world. Okay, anyone else has any other point to share?
Yes, attached person
Anyone,
forgets.
I mean, any other member from the group who has not spoken so far? Do you have any other point that you wish to contribute to this? Apart from these three speakers? Does anyone has any other point? Okay, yes, Kanchan Mataji, please go ahead.
Attached person does not know that he forgets actually that Krishna is known as Rishikesha because he's been misusing his senses for so long. He is engaging in sense gratification and he is bewildered by his false ego, and thereby he forgets his relationship, eternal relationship with Krishna.
Yes. So the consequences, one of the factor is consequences. So in attached worker, the consequences is they forget Krishna. And the consequences for a detached worker is they are not disturbed by material reaction and considers all reaction as mercy of Krishna. So they always remember Krishna. Okay.
Prabhuji,
So,
also the
yes, please.
Prabhuji, in 28 it's mentioned that because he's knows that the detached worker knows that the supreme controller is Lord Krishna, so he is not disturbed by the material reactions because he considers all to be the mercy of the Lord.
Yes, therefore he sees Krishna in all circumstances. Excellent point. So yes, so there are many differentiating criteria. One was on the basis of desire and conviction, based upon the knowledge of their own identity, based upon their engagement, and based upon the consequences of their action. So Srila Prabhupada is elaborately explaining the difference between attached and a detached worker. So now, if a person in knowledge is expected to set an example, then why don't they set an example of renunciation? That is my question to all of you. Now, Krishna is telling Arjun, you set an example of performing prescribed duties. So can't Krishna tell Arjuna to set an example of renunciation? Is renunciation not important? What do you think? Krishna is telling Yad Yad Acharati Shreshthas Tatta Deva Taro Jana. Please follow because general mass will follow. So that's a good thing. Now, if Arjuna is renouncing, then general mass will also be inspired to renounce. So can't Arjuna set an example of renunciation here?
So,
Yes.
Prabhu, exactly till he is not in, is in confusion stage. He's not liberated soul. So Arjuna, Krishna is telling first you follow your duties. Afterwards, when you get at that stage, then you can come to renunciation.
Okay. So but Arjuna is telling, you tell me, I'm ready to renounce. Krishna, just give me instruction. And Krishna says, okay, you renounce and I can renounce. I get that clarity of my mind. And would that not be an ideal example to set in front of general public? Yes,
Krishna was already designed for Kshatriya, gave in role of Kshatriya. So he should, and he is playing an act of Kshatriya. So he should be an example for that case.
Okay, thank you. Good. Yes, Mukund Priya Mataji.
Prabhuji, at that time, point of moment when they were standing in the battlefield, according to Kshatriya Dharam, he has to fight. So renounce order, maybe the later stage of the life can be an example, but in that particular situation, his dharma says, according to Krishna, that he has to follow the varnashram dharma, and according to that, he has to fight.
Okay. Well, thank you. Yes, Priya Mataji and Krishna Prabhu and Kanchan Mani Mataji and Shruti Priya Mataji. Yes, all of your reasons that you mentioned in the chat section, they are absolutely correct. So the most of the people are not qualified to follow the example of renunciation. If the general mass follow that example of renunciation and they renounce their worldly responsibilities without the necessary purification in the heart, what will happen? They will eventually try to fulfill their desires, but in a very irresponsible way. Okay. So now Krishna tells how a detached person, after comparing the two, relates with a person who is in ignorance. So in verse 26 and 29, let us stay on the screen.
Prabhuji, can you please repeat the question?
No, we are just moving to the next section, that how does a detached person relates with someone who is in ignorance, or he relates with an attached person. So that Krishna is explaining in the next verse, verse 29, and he gave something about the same subject matter in verse 26 as well. Bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. But the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge. Okay, please read. Anandita Mataji, can you read the first paragraph?
Yeah. Persons who are unknowledgeable falsely identify with gross material consciousness and are full of material designations. This body is a gift of material nature, and one who is too much attached to the bodily consciousness is called manda, or a lazy person without understanding of spirit soul. Ignorant men think of the body as the self. They accept bodily connections with others as kinsmanships. The land in which the body is obtained is their object of worship, and they consider the formalities of religious rituals to be ends in themselves. Social work, nationalism, and altruism are some of the activities for such materially designated persons. Under the spell of such designations, they are always busy in the material field. For them, spiritual realization is a myth, and so they are not interested. Has it ended? Those who are enlightened in spiritual life, however, should not try to agitate such materially engrossed persons. Better to prosecute one's own spiritual activities silently. Such bewildered persons may be engaged in such primary moral principles of life as non-violence and similar materially benevolent works.
Yeah, continue. I will read the next paragraph also.
Men who are ignorant cannot appreciate activities in Krishna consciousness, and therefore Lord Krishna advises us not to disturb them and simply waste valuable time. Very important. But the devotees of the Lord are more kind than the Lord because they understand the purpose of the Lord. Consequently, they undertake all kinds of risks, even to the point of approaching ignorant men to try to engage them in the acts of Krishna consciousness, which are absolutely necessary for the human being.
Okay, so based upon this and what we read in verse 26, what are Krishna's suggestion? How do they deal with an attached worker? So the first point is they should not unnecessarily agitate their minds of fruitive workers, that you need to give up everything and just renounce and give. So don't agitate their minds. That's the first thing. Don't induce them to stop work. And at the same time, Srila Prabhupada is writing, they undertake all kinds of risks, the devotees of the Lord, even to the point of approaching ignorant men to try to engage them in acts of Krishna consciousness. So engage them in the activities of Krishna consciousness for their gradual development. So why Srila Prabhupada writes that why a self-realized soul should not disturb others who are attached to fruitive acts. So if they are following the Vedic rituals, the Karma Kanda process, they will ultimately lead to the Krishna. 15:15, Krishna says, Vedeshta sarver ahameva vedya. So, and the conditioned soul, they do not know anything beyond sense gratification, and that is the only reason they take up the study of Vedas, to fulfill their own desires. And through regulative fruitive activities and sense gratification as per Vedic rituals, they are gradually elevated to Krishna consciousness. Any example of taking all kinds of risk, even to the point of approaching ignorant men? We hear,
Jesus.
yes, Jesus.
Nityananda Prabhu and Haridas.
And Haridas Thakur, and approaching Jagai and Madai, and approaching all the doors, all the homes in Nadia. And some are welcoming them, some are saying, you are like rogues who have come now just to see how much property we have, and you'll come in the night to rob us. Don't again come into this house, otherwise we'll complain to the king. And they even approach Jagai and Madai. Everyone stops them, but they take that risk to fulfill the order because they know the heart of the Lord. So they want to introduce Krishna consciousness to them. And yet at the same time, how to engage them in Krishna consciousness is also very important. Rather than just telling them to give up everything and just preaching renunciation, devotees go and engage them in service of Krishna. So, so this verse 30, suddenly, there are so many confusions about Nishkam Karma Yoga, Krishna consciousness, Buddhi Yoga. What are these? Are the same, different? And here Krishna directly says again, just like in chapter 2, he said Mat Parha. And now in verse 30 here, after describing Nishkam Karma Yoga, he's telling Arjuna, Mai sarvani karmani sanyasyadhyatma chetasa nirashi nirmamo bhutva yudhyasva vigatajvaraha. Mai sarvani karmani. Ultimately, the goal of Nishkam Karma Yoga is Krishna. This is the verse about Bhakti. Mai sarvani karmani. That you give up the results of all your action, surrender unto me. Surrender all the results into me. You act for me. Mai sarvani karmani, all act. Sanyas adhyatma chetasa. Sanyasya means to give up, and adhyatma chetasa, with the chetna of adhyatma, that means knowledge of the self. What should you do? Nirashir. Nirmamo bhutva. Nirashir means don't have any asha on result. Nirmama, without false ego. Yudhyasva vigata jvara, and fight yuddha, but how? Vigat jvara, without being lethargic. Therefore, O Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me with full knowledge of me, without desire for profit, with no claims to proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight. Okay. Shruti Priya Mataji, can you read please the purport? Okay, Krishna.
This verse clearly indicates the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita. The Lord instructs that one has to become fully Krishna conscious to discharge duties, as if in military discipline. Such an injunction may make things a little difficult. Nevertheless, duties must be carried out. with dependence on Krishna, because that is the constitutional position of the living entity. The living entity cannot be happy independent of the cooperation of the Supreme Lord, because the eternal constitutional position of the living entity is to become subordinate to the desires of the Lord. Arjun was therefore ordered by Sri Krishna to fight as if the Lord were his military commander. One has to sacrifice everything for the goodwill of the Supreme Lord and at the same time discharge prescribed duties without claiming proprietorship. Arjun did not have to consider the order of the Lord, he had only to execute his order. The Supreme Lord is the soul of all souls. Therefore, one who depends solely and wholly on the Supreme Soul without personal consideration, or in other words, one who is fully Krishna conscious, is called Adhyatma Chetas. Nirashi means that one has to act on the order of the master but should not expect fruitive results. The cashier may count millions of dollars for his employer, but he does not claim a cent for himself. Similarly, one has to realize that nothing in the world belongs to any individual person, but that everything belongs to the Supreme Lord. That is the real purport of Mai or unto me. And when one acts in Krishna consciousness, certainly he does not claim proprietorship over anything. This consciousness is called nirmama or nothing is mine. And if there is any reluctance to execute such a stern order, which is without consideration of so called kinsmen in the bodily relationship, that reluctance should be thrown off. In this way, one may become vigajwara or without feverish mentality or lethargy. Everyone, according to his quality and position, has a particular type of work to discharge, and all such duties may be discharged in Krishna consciousness as described above. That will lead one to the path of liberation.
So yes, as we see in verse 30, Lord Krishna is explaining, Srila Prabhupada is explaining the purport, the different meanings of the words that Krishna uses. Adhyatma Chetasa, Nirashi, Mai, Nirmam, Vigatvaraha. What does this mean exactly, right? Adhyatma Chetasa, one who is fully Krishna conscious and depends solely and wholly on Supreme Soul without personal consideration. Then he goes on to explain Nirashi, to act on the order of master without exacting fruitive result. And he gives an example of cashier counting millions of dollars. Mai, Nirmam, Vigajwaraha, giving up any reluctance to fight. So, if one acts in such a way, what happens? Although Prabhupada says this may be a little difficult in the beginning, that this verse, Srila Prabhupada, right, this is the purpose of Bhagavad Gita. And Lord instructs that one has to become. This may make things a little difficult. Nevertheless, duties must be carried out with dependence on Krishna. Yeah. Srila Prabhupada in one of the lectures is saying the purpose of Bhagavad Gita is Arjuna in the beginning, he was saying no Krishna, to transform that no to yes. Yes, Krishna. Yes, sir, I will do it. So the purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to transform the two-letter word no to three-letter word yes. So all the lifetimes you have said no, Krishna, no, no, no. But in this one lifetime, Srila Prabhupada says, just say yes, Krishna, I will do as you say. So if one does that, what happens? In the next verse, Krishna is explaining the result of following this injunction and the results of not following this injunction. Okay. Would someone like to read verse 31 and 32 translation?
Praji, can I read?
Yes, please.
Verse 31 translation. Those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions and who follow this teaching faithfully without envy become free from the bondage of fruitive action. Verse 32 translation. But those who out of envy disregard these teachings and do not follow them regularly are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, befooled, ruined in their endeavors for perfection
So yes, Krishna is telling how to follow. If you see the verse 31.
Faithfully.
So, Shraddhavanto Nasuyanto. How to follow this injunction with Shraddha. At the same time, Anasuyantaha, without envy. And if one follows in such a way, one becomes free from the bondage of fruitive actions. At the same time, those who out of envy disregard these teachings and do not follow them regularly are to be considered bereft of all knowledge. So where does envy comes in the picture? Why suddenly Krishna is saying without envy and with envy? So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, let me just open that verse. Okay. No, it's just a second there. So yes, the question remains: why, how is envy relevant here? Okay, Shraddha, we understand if one follows by Shraddha, but envy. It says Krishna. Yes, Anandita Mataji.
Because ignorant man thinks himself as the controller. They don't understand, they don't want to know that there is some other controller. There is a supreme controller. And if they know, then they are envious that why Krishna is the controller. Why am I not?
Okay, yes. So Krishna is our supreme well-wisher, and if a supreme well-wisher is giving an instruction for our supreme welfare and one is not following, what are some of the reasons? And Krishna points out to the exact reason of envy. So you have written in the chat, envy does not accept this teaching. They do not want to offer results to Krishna, but enjoy supreme position of Krishna. Yes. So out of envy, one disregards these teachings and do not follow them regularly, are to be considered as bereft of knowledge. Okay, so another point that one of the way of Krishna's teaching is by contrasting. So Krishna, choices, there can be some choices which may seem small and inconsequential, yet Krishna is pointing out the results can be very, very grave. Srila Prabhupada used to give an example. If a plane takes a slight deviation of even 0.1 degree, now for the pilot, it may be 0.01 degree, 0.1 degree, but ultimately, the destination would be a very, very different one. So Krishna again and again uses this strategy of educating by showing the two contrasts. If you follow this all will happen. If you don't follow, this all will happen. We'll see in chapter 4 also, chapter 7, chapter 8, chapter 9, chapter 14, chapter 16, chapter 18, right? So here, who faithfully out of and based on Shraddha and without envy follow Krishna's instruction, they'll be liberated. But if someone out of envy disregard these teachings, they'll be ruined. So there are two motivating factors. One is faith and envy. So basically, envy is referring to the reluctance or refusal to acknowledge that we can be benefited from the guidance of our well-wisher Krishna. And based upon this envy, what happens? We become blinded, we become disempowered. Ultimately, it leads to self-destruction. But in contrast, if there is faith in Krishna's guidance, it opens us for so many blessings. There is a clarity, there is a commitment, there is composure. This Chaitanya Charan Prabhu wrote in one of his books an article on this particular verse. And this Krishna's methodology of contrasting, the two extreme results. So, in next verse, interestingly, Krishna is speaking about suppression. Let us read. Yes, please, someone who would like to volunteer, can you read verse 33? Quick, anyone, please unmute yourself and speak.
Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature, for everyone follows the nature he has acquired from the three modes. What can repression accomplish? Verse 34. There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization.
Okay, so yeah, that's it. So in verse 32, Krishna was explaining the result of disregarding his teachings. So now, if a person who is aware of the punishment or who is aware of, I'll be ruined if I do this act, will such person be afraid of committing sin or afraid of going down that path? Not necessarily. Therefore, Krishna is telling such people are impelled to act sinfully due to strong past habits and impression. What then to speak of one who is unaware of the punishment? So Krishna is speaking about working according to one's nature. So we cannot force someone to give up their conditional nature and material desires, because Krishna is saying even a man of knowledge acts according to his nature. Even everyone is following the nature that they are acquired from the three modes. And therefore, what can repression accomplish? So, Maya, despite one's intelligence, is invested with the potency to push a conditioned soul away from Krishna consciousness. So if we all are helplessly forced to act according to our nature, what is the use of so many rules in the Shastras to regulate our activities? So in verse 33, Krishna is telling, what can repression accomplish? So one can ask, if we don't have to repress and everyone is acting according to their nature, why Shastra is giving so many instructions? And therefore, Krishna is saying in the verse 34, Indriyasyate rag dvesha vyavastito tayo navasham agache tau hiyasya paripanthino. There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. Okay, let us read the purport to verse 34, please. Yes, can someone please read?
Hare Krishna. Those who are in Krishna consciousness are naturally reluctant to engage in material sense gratification. But those who are not in such consciousness should follow the rules and regulations of the revealed scriptures. Unrestricted sense enjoyment is the cause of material engagement. But one who follows the rules and regulations of the revealed scriptures does not become entangled by the sense objects. For example, sex enjoyment is a necessity for the conditioned soul, and the sex enjoyment is allowed under the license of marriage ties. According to the scriptural injunctions, one is forbidden to engage in sex relationships with any woman other than one's wife. All other women are to be considered as one's mother. But in spite of such injunctions, a man is still inclined to have sex relationships with other women. These propensities are to be curbed, otherwise they will be stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. As long as the material body is there, the necessities of material body are allowed, but under rules and regulations. And yet, we should not rely upon the control of such allowances. One has to follow those rules and regulations unattached to them, because practice of sense gratification under regulations may also lead one to go astray, as much as there is always the chance of an accident, even on the royal roads. Although they may be carefully maintained, no one can guarantee that there will be no danger even on the safest road. The sense enjoyment spirit has been current a very long time, owing to material association. Therefore, in spite of regulated sense enjoyment, there is every chance of falling down. Therefore, any attachment for regulated sense enjoyment must also be avoided by all means. But attachment to Krishna consciousness or acting always in the loving service of Krishna detaches one from all kinds of sensory activities. Therefore, no one should try to be detached from Krishna consciousness at any stage of life. The whole process of detachment from all kinds of sense attachment is ultimately to become situated on the platform of Krishna consciousness.
Even Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is writing that when Lord Krishna explains the results of not following his instruction, then Arjuna is asking that you explained the results of not following our instruction, but such person will not they be afraid of not following our instruction, the instruction of the Supreme Lord or the instructions of a king? And Krishna says, no, they are not afraid. Why? Because one who is engaging one's senses for enjoyment, even if they are intelligent, they cannot consider the order of the Supreme Lord. Why? Because this is because of their nature. So if the person of knowledge engages in sin, they will receive hellish punishment, and it will also bring infamy. Still, even the person of discrimination perform actions which yields a burden of suffering, following their previous sinful habits. And but then Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is explaining the glory of Bhakti Yoga, which comes from unpredictable mercy, even for the most sinful person. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is glorifying Bhakti, that how the Bhakti can transforms one innate nature. And for next verse, since the rules in the purport to the verse 34 only, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is writing Since the rules and restrictions of scriptures do not have effect upon those of evil nature, only if one is not under the influence of one's sinful nature arising from past sinful habit is one able to limit the senses. Okay, I'm sure it must have gone above their head. So wait. So in this verse, there are principles to regulate attachment and aversion. What is attachment and what is aversion? Attachment means sense gratification. That means engaging one's engaging one's senses in the sense objects. And what is aversion? Aversion means hatred for those that obstructs one's sense enjoyment. So attachment means engaging senses into sense object. Aversion means if anyone is hindering my sense gratification, I hate them and I consider them as my enemy. So one should be cautious and one should not fall under the control of either of attachment or aversion. And Srila Prabhupada in this verse says that these two are the stumbling blocks on the path of spiritual life, spiritual journey. How to get out of it? Do not come under the control of attachment and aversion, and there are principles to regulate those attachments. Srila Prabhupada writes, there's always a chance of accident, even on Royal Road. So this attachment is the cause for one's bondage or one's engagement in this material body. And Srila Prabhupada gives what are those principles to regulate attachment and aversion, and he gives one example of marriage. How one can regulate sex enjoyment under the license of marriage ties. What Srila Prabhupada interestingly writes that there is one kind of attachment which leads to all kinds of detachment. And what is that attachment? Attachment to Krishna consciousness. If one is attached to Krishna consciousness, then they get all the detachment. And we have to avoid one kind of detachment. Detachment from Krishna consciousness at any stage of life. So the whole purpose of detachment is to come to the point of Krishna consciousness. So now, after hearing all of this, Arjuna can ask, you are speaking about performance of duties. So what if I follow someone else's duty? Just like duty of a Brahmana is non-violence. So I'm following that duty of being non-violent. And you are also telling about following our duty in Nishkamana. So what if I follow someone else's duty? So therefore, next Krishna says, Shreyan Swadharmo Viguna, Paradharmat Svanushtita, Swadharma Nidhanam Shreya, Paradharmo Bhayava. No, not someone else's duty, your duty. Don't try to imitate anyone else. Do your duty. It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily, than another's duty perfectly. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duties, for to follow another's path is dangerous. This verse is again repeated in chapter 18 as well. So, Krishna is saying, no, Shreyan Swadharma Vigudaha. It is better Swadharma, to perform one's own duty. It is Shreya to stick to Swadharma. Then Paradharma, Swanusthita. Even if it is Viguna, your Swadharma, but still it is Shreya. Rather than Paradharma, that is performed perfectly Anusthita. Swadharma Nidhinam Shreya. Even if you die while doing your Swadharma, it is still Shreya, better. Paradharmo Bhayavaha. Because someone else's duty is Bhayavaha, it's dangerous. It's a cause of fear. So,
Can you give an example for this to explain this?
yes, there are many examples, and Srila Prabhupada himself gives a couple of examples in the purport. So let us read directly. I'm just reading from here. Duties on the spiritual platform and duties on the material platform may be different, but the principle of following the authorized direction is always good for the performer. When one is under the spell of modes of material nature, one should follow the prescribed rules for his particular situation and should not imitate others. For example, a Brahmin who is in the mode of goodness is non-violent, whereas a Kshatriya who is in the mode of passion is allowed to be violent. As such, for a Kshatriya, it is better to be vanquished, following the rules of violence, than to imitate a Brahmana who follows the principles of non-violence. And let us come a little down. However, when one transcends the modes of material nature and is fully situated in Krishna consciousness, he can perform anything and everything under the direction of bona fide spiritual master. In that complete stage of Krishna consciousness, the Kshatriya may act as Brahman or a Brahmana may act as Kshatriya. For example, Vishwamitra was originally a Kshatriya, but later on he acted as a Brahman. Whereas Parshuram was a Brahman, but later on he acted as a Kshatriya. Being transiently situated, they could do so, but as long as one is on the material platform, he must perform his duties according to the modes of material nature. So as long as one is in the modes of material nature, it is better to stick to one's own duty rather than imitating someone else's duty. So Arjun was a Kshatriya. He is supposed to fight. He's not supposed to be non-violent, specifically on the battlefield. So therefore, Krishna is telling, be violent. I'm sure in the chapter 1 also must have discussed violence is necessary for Kshatriya rather than imitating Brahmana. Brahmana can be non-violent, but not you. So, and in chapter 18 also, Srila Prabhupada describes there may be fault in everyone's performance of duty. For example, a Brahmana has to perform sacrifice. They have to kill various animals during the course of sacrifice. Vaishya has to speak lie in the business transactions. A Kshatriya has to practice hunting. They have to engage in diplomacy. Yet, one should not give up one's prescribed duties. Rather, one should purify one's duty by offering the results to Krishna. Okay. So, the last section of this chapter is an important one, where Krishna discusses that enemy through which propels one to sinful actions. So what makes us do things we know which are not good for us, but still we do it? So Krishna is telling how dutiful diligence, how you should have you should follow the principles of regulation, and through that you can empower yourself. But then Arjuna asked, what are the obstacles in such responsible conduct? You are telling to regulate attachment and aversion, but what are the challenge? What are the obstacles that come in doing that? And then I know this is good for me. I know I should be regulated, but still I'm not able to do so. Why is that? And then we'll have that section in our next class. So we'll stop here. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. One important thing, since we missed one class, when can we have that next class? Can we have that tomorrow? Are you available, willing, open to have a session tomorrow? Or does anyone object to that, or they are not available? Please let us know. Can we have the session tomorrow? I'm not sure how many students are there in the batch. I was told there are, I think, 28 students. I'm not sure. But I see only 13 in the class. So I'm not sure. I haven't asked other devotees. So who is the coordinator? Who is coordinating those things? Are the coordinators present?
Hare Krishna, Guruji.
Just a second, I received a message. I suggest to do not take any class on Saturday, Sunday, because many devotees are on a trip to Haridwar with Maharajji. That's why many devotees are absent. Okay, yes, Maharaj are having a trip. Yatra is going on, and many devotees are reading that they are gone to attend that yatra. So, okay, so then please discuss among yourselves and let me know the date. See if the devotees are present and if your cameras are open and if you are actually there participating, there can be a lot of discussions that can happen. Or if those discussions are not happening in the class, I can. Yes, next Saturday we can have Vidyavati Madhuri. So, okay, so before you go, yes.
I want to do one thing, because if the class happens on the next Saturday, and since the next portion will start, right? I think His Grace Vanshivardhan Prabhu's class will start from next Thursday. So, there will be an interruption. 2 days we will do chapter 6, 7 or 8 like that. So I think that earlier there were 40 devotees who were attending the class. Now must be because of some other issues. The few members are here. But because many of us are hearing recorded sessions also, in case we miss, and many of them must be missing today also. So isn't it fine that we do it tomorrow, and those who miss, they can hear the class later on?
So I can't say anything in this regard, up to you, all of you, whatever the coordinators decide. Even if you don't decide, if you want to finish within those classes, we can do that as well. But I wanted to have some important discussions. Okay, before you go, few questions for all of yours reflection. I'm posting some questions in the group. Think over them. I'm giving in the chat section, okay? So just copy paste with yourself. I'm giving you more questions in the group. Since anyway, whatever the reasons, we are not able to have this kind of discussions here right now. But you can always reflect upon these questions, think of certain points, and yeah, just copy paste these questions with yourself, okay? And please, if you get time, do think over them, write some points based upon those discussions. based upon these questions. Of course, there are many questions, but I wanted to give you 3. How many questions have you received? Just 1 or 2?
Yes, only one, just regarding the fanatism and emotional.
No. Wait. Just a second. It is how the first H is missing. It is how is it possible? Okay. And I'm copy pasting the third question also. Okay, so all the best. Happy weekend. Please come prepare after reading the purports to chapter 4. Go through the previous session, previous readings. If you have any questions or any point that is not clear, even if it is discussed in the class, you want to bring that up again, no, absolutely no issue. You have the document link with you. Just type your questions in that document and we can take that up. Okay. So yes, Prabhu, if you want, you can put this question in WhatsApp group also. There are no marks to it. It's not an official homework assignment. Yet if you want to engage in it, you're most welcome. If you have any doubts, anything, we can always take that in the class. And please at least hear one Srila Prabhupada's class or hear the recitations of Srila Prabhupada and Bhagavad Gita. Okay. Thank you very much, Hare Krishna. You can all go right now. If you have any question or anything that you want to discuss at this point, I'm still here. Those who want to leave, you can leave. Thank you.
Just a small question I wanted to ask here. So, just one definition: aversion you told, attachment you told, that engaging the senses in the sense objects, and aversion you told, a hatred for those who is stopping us from sense object gratification. Is it the definition, Mr. Nu?
Yes, Prabhu. Aversion can be both a hatred towards sense objects or the persons who are who are putting some obstacles in our sense enjoyment.
Okay.
So if there is someone who doesn't add to my sense gratification, I feel not good towards that person. I feel reluctant to interact with that person, or I'm averse to that person. I consider him or her as my enemy. And anyone who helps in my sense enjoyment, that person is my friend.
But how can you please also give a situation where a person generally has hatred towards sense objects? The first part that you told.
Oh yes, all women are bad. All women are Maya, and therefore I hate women, or vice versa. Or if someone is struggling with sweets and they start telling themselves all sweets are bad, all sweets are bad, all sweets are bad, and there is too much of hatred towards that.
So isn't like that is also a sign of attachment only? The person who is like too much averse to a sense object is actually attached to the sense object, but he's like telling that he doesn't like it in that sense, right?
Yes, in one sense, yes. You are right. And that is why it is said they are the two sides of the same coin. So that person may not admit that who is actually attached or who is actually hating that they themselves may not understand, but someone who's detached, who's neutral, they can see that they are the same side of attachment. Yeah.
Okay, Prabhuji, thank you.
Yeah. Yes, Kanchan, one more thing.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, in the last verse we discussed, the 35th, what is the practical application for us? Like in the case of Arjuna, it is evident that Arjuna is a Kshatriya, and for him, not following Brahmana's duties is not prescribed. But like, what is the practical application of this verse in our life, where we should do our prescribed duties and not other?
Yes, actually, it is. We're supposed to have a very big lot of discussion on this question about Swadharma. Swadharma, what is Swadharma for a practicing devotee? Are we transcendental? Are we supposed to act just transcendently? Or is there any Swadharma? Swadharma, I mean, Srila Prabhupada writes there are two dharmas. One is related to soul, one is related to the body. So, till the time one is under the modes of nature, one should follow one's prescribed duties as Swadharma. First point is, am I under the three modes of nature? If yes, what is my Swadharma? Based upon Swadharma means based upon one's varna and one's ashram. And spiritual duty is specifically the instructions of spiritual master carried out in the service of Krishna. That is spiritual duty. So both are important. So my spiritual duty in terms of my instructions that I've received from my spiritual master, so that is very important. At the same time, my duties related to my varna and ashram, that are important. So that this means translate practically into, if I'm a let us say if you're a student, to carry out the duty of studying is important. If you are engaged in your working and your profession is there, so carrying out the duty of that profession is important. If one is in a female body, śāstrī dharma, what is that śāstrī dharma? To understand that and to fulfill that is important. If you're a daughter, if you're a wife, if you're a mother, my role, my duties as a mother, my duties as a daughter, my duties as a wife, what are those duties? To understand that and to fulfill that, that is my dharma. And this is very broad generic principles, yes, and there can be a lot of details and a lot of ifs and buts can come, but generally speaking, yes, within that purview. Okay. So no, Prabhu, there is no session that is happening tomorrow. We haven't concluded anything. There are mixed opinions. So let me speak with Rasal Prabhu first. And if at all something happens, then we can inform everyone through WhatsApp. Okay. Thank you. Hare Krishna.